All right, I've been involved in Bible translation on different levels for many years. The commentary I'm producing on the book of Job, I did a fresh translation of the book of Job for that. I've helped out with some other translations. I love translation work, and because of that, I can say there is no one best English translation. That is totally subjective. There are some that are better and some that are worse, but to say that there is a best one is subjective. Now, let's take a look at 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. Look at what Paul writes there. He says this, 2 Timothy 2:15, "Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth." Now, I cite that because the King James says, "Study to shew thyself approved to God." And people say, that tells us we should study the scripture. No, it doesn't. That's not the emphasis there. Oh yeah, the end of the verse, rightly handling the word of truth, or in the King James, rightly dividing the word of truth, is telling us we need to be students of the word. But Old English study did not mean the same as our study today. It meant do your best. So people will often cite that verse to say, we should study the Bible. It says, study to show thyself approved to God. In point of fact, that was Old English, where study simply meant do your best as opposed to study with books. Of course, elsewhere in the scriptures, we're called to study the scriptures and meditate on the scriptures and understand the scriptures. Of course, that's important. But I just point that out because it's ironic that many people pointing to the importance of studying scripture will use a verse and they don't even understand that the King James there did not mean study as in read books, but study as in Old English, do your best. All right, what modern translations would I recommend? Well, some of the best ones would be the ESV or the HCSB translations, the NET, if you want to get a little bit more technical, sometimes a little less readable, but more technical with thousands of explanatory notes and available free online. If you want something that reads more smoothly, the NIV does read more smoothly, but I say sometimes at the expense of being even more careful with the text as the ESV might be. If you're looking for something with a Messianic Jewish emphasis, then the Tree of Life version is a new team production that's been put together. But there are so many modern translations. If you're looking for something in the spirit of the King James, but updated, more modernized, I prefer the MEV, the Modern English Version, to the New King James Version. But let me just say this. Do not use something like the Message as your primary Bible. Do not. It is an extensive paraphrase, brilliant at points. Other points takes liberties with the text that I don't agree with or goes in directions that I don't agree with. If you want here and there to use it when you think it really captures the meaning of something for preaching or teaching, great, but don't use it as a primary translation. The New Living Translation, if English is your second language, you need something a bit more simple. This is a fine scholarly work, but it is a moderate paraphrase. So it's a translation/paraphrase, and therefore only use it as your primary version if your English is not as strong. Otherwise, use it to illustrate things well. It's a very lively translation. Something like the Amplified, use that in a secondary or tertiary way, not in the primary way. It's not intended to be a primary translation. It takes away from the flow of the word, and then it gives you lots of options in terms of potential meanings of words without telling you which is the best in that context. But there are many excellent English translations. The best Jewish translation of the Old Testament that's been done so far is what's called the New Jewish Publication Society version, also known as the Tanakh. To get an Orthodox Jewish perspective, use the Stone translation. But there's so much available.